Ever noticed how the world feels different at 3 a.m.? There's a stillness that wraps around you like a blanket, not quite comforting, more like heavy with expectation. The house makes those little settling noises that seem so much louder in the darkness. Maybe your partner's breathing beside you, deep in slumber, while you lie there, eyes wide open, mind suddenly frustratingly alert. The digital clock glows. 3:12 a.m. And something inside you sighs. Again? This is the third night this week. You close your eyes, willing sleep to return, but your body has other ideas. It's as though someone flipped a switch, and now you're just awake. You might wonder if this is punishment for something. That extra dessert at dinner? Those worries about your grandson's new job? Or is it simply the price of adding another candle to your birthday cake each year? Maybe your parents experienced this too, this uninvited, middle-of-the-nightness alertness, and never mentioned it was part of the package deal of growing older. You lie there, listening to the refrigerator hum from the kitchen, mentally calculating how many hours of sleep you'll get if you fall back asleep right now. If. That's the operative word, because right now sleep feels like a distant memory, a skill you somehow forgot overnight, even though you've been doing it successfully your entire life. But what if I told you that this experience, this 3 a.m. wake-up call that feels so isolating in the moment, is actually something millions of others your age are experiencing tonight? What if these unwelcome awakenings aren't random glitches in your system or signs that your body is somehow failing you, but are instead meaningful signals, a form of midnight communication from your body that deserves to be understood rather than fought against? Throughout our conversation today, I want to explore something that many health articles skim right over: the profound, fascinating shifts happening within your body as it matures. These aren't the surface-level tips and tricks for better sleep that you've probably already tried. We're going deeper. You see, I believe there is wisdom in understanding not just what's happening when you wake at 3 a.m., but why it's happening. When you truly grasp what your body is experiencing, that understanding itself becomes a kind of medicine, one that can transform frustration into insight, worry into self-compassion. Over the next few minutes, we're going to uncover 7 often overlooked reasons why so many adults in their golden years find themselves wide awake when the world is still dark. We'll explore the gentle reorchestration of your body's internal symphony, the subtle ways your lifetime of experiences shapes your nighttime consciousness, and the beautiful, complex journey your body is navigating right now. These aren't just clinical explanations. They're windows into understanding this chapter of your life with greater clarity and kindness. Because contrary to what you might have been told, waking at 3 a.m. isn't always a problem to be solved. Sometimes it's a reality to be understood, worked with, even appreciated. So let's begin this exploration together, shall we? No judgment, no quick fixes, just honest insight into why your eyes might open at 3 a.m. and what that might really be telling you about the remarkable body that's carried you through life thus far. In melatonin production changes. Let's start with something foundational, a quiet chemical shift happening inside you that's rewriting the rules of your sleep. I'm talking about melatonin, that remarkable hormone that orchestrates the rhythm of your night. Think of melatonin as the conductor of sleep's orchestra. When darkness falls, your pineal gland, a tiny pine-cone-shaped structure in your brain, begins releasing melatonin into your bloodstream. This is your body's natural way of saying, time to wind down now. That subtle wave of drowsiness you feel in the evening, that's melatonin at work, gently easing you towards sleep. In our younger years, this system is remarkably robust. As evening approaches, melatonin levels rise steadily, reaching their peak in the middle of the night, then gradually declining as morning approaches. The production is strong, consistent, and beautifully timed to support deep, unbroken sleep through the night. Remember those days when you could sleep through thunderstorms? When your head hit the pillow and the next thing you knew, it was morning? That was your melatonin working at full capacity. But here's what many people don't realize. As we journey through life, particularly as we cross into our 60s and beyond, our pineal gland undergoes natural changes. It calcifies slightly and often begins producing less melatonin than it once did. This isn't a malfunction, it's a natural transition, as normal as silver appearing in your hair or laugh lines deepening around your eyes. The change isn't dramatic at first. It's gradual, subtle, almost imperceptible, year by year. But eventually this gentle reduction can have a noticeable impact on your sleep architecture, particularly in the second half of the night. You see, that lower overall production of melatonin means its levels might not stay elevated enough throughout the entire night. You might still have sufficient melatonin to fall asleep initially, enough to carry you through those first few sleep cycles. But as the night progresses, particularly as you approach those pre-dawn hours around 2:30 or 3 a.m., your melatonin levels might dip below the threshold needed to maintain deep sleep. Think of it like this. Melatonin is like the anchor that keeps your boat of consciousness securely in the harbor of sleep. When you were younger, that anchor was heavy, solid, immovable. But now, it's a bit lighter. It still works perfectly well when the waters are calm, but as the tide of your sleep lightens in those early morning hours, that anchor might not hold as firmly. Your boat begins to drift toward wakefulness not because anything's wrong with the boat, but simply because the anchor is doing what a lighter anchor naturally does. Margaret, a 71-year-old retired teacher I spoke with, described her experience beautifully. "I used to think something was wrong with me," she told me. "I'd fall asleep just fine around 10 p.m., but almost like clockwork, my eyes would open at 2:45 a.m. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't particularly worried about anything. I was just awake." For months, Margaret felt frustrated, even anxious about these awakenings. But after learning about the natural changes in melatonin production, she approached the situation differently. She invested in room-darkening shades to eliminate the streetlight that filtered through her curtains. She removed the digital clock that cast a blue glow in her bedroom. She even placed a small piece of black tape over the tiny LED light on her television. It wasn't an overnight miracle, Margaret admitted, but gradually those awakenings became less frequent, and when they did happen, they felt less disruptive. Understanding that this wasn't some personal failing but just my body's natural evolution, that changed everything for me. What Margaret discovered speaks to another important aspect of melatonin production: its sensitivity to light. As we age, our eyes actually become more sensitive to light, not less. Even minimal light exposure, the glow from a smartphone notification, the soft light from a bathroom nightlight down the hall, the dim shine of street lamps through curtains, can further suppress an already decreased melatonin production. Light that your body might have easily filtered out in your 40s now sends a stronger signal to your brain. It's daytime, time to be alert. This increased sensitivity, combined with naturally lower melatonin levels, creates a perfect storm for those 3 a.m. awakenings. The most powerful realization here is that this change in your sleep chemistry isn't a breakdown or a failure. It's a natural transition, a shift in how your body operates at this stage of your journey. Understanding this doesn't completely eliminate those early morning awakenings, but it transforms how you experience them. Instead of lying awake thinking, "What's wrong with me?" you might instead recognize, this is my body's natural rhythm now. How can I work with it rather than against it? This shift in perspective alone can reduce the anxiety and frustration that often accompany sleep disruptions, emotions that, ironically, can make it even harder to drift back to sleep. When you release the self-blame, when you understand the biology behind these changes, you create space for a gentler, more compassionate relationship with your nighttime self. 2. Shifting circadian rhythm, advanced sleep phase. Beyond the ebb and flow of melatonin lies another fascinating shift that often comes with mature years. A gradual, subtle change in the very timing of your body's internal clock. Scientists call this phenomenon advanced sleep phase, but in everyday terms it simply means your body's natural rhythm is gently shifting earlier. Think back to your younger adult years. Perhaps you were someone who naturally stayed up until 11 p.m. or midnight, still feeling alert and engaged. Maybe you enjoyed those evening hours after the kids were in bed, catching up on reading, watching your favorite shows, or simply enjoying the quiet. Waking up early might have felt like a struggle, something you did because you had to, not because your body naturally wanted to. Your circadian rhythm, that internal 24-hour clock that regulates sleepiness, alertness, and various bodily functions, was likely aligned to a later schedule then, perfectly suited for the demands and rhythms of that stage of life. But as the years have passed, you may have noticed subtle shifts. Perhaps you find yourself feeling naturally drowsy around 8:30 or 9 p.m., struggling to stay awake for that 10 p.m. show you've always enjoyed. Maybe you notice yourself naturally waking earlier, watching the sunrise not because you set an alarm, but because your body decided it was time to start the day. This isn't your imagination, and it's not simply a matter of being more tired as you age. It's a genuine, documented shift in your body's internal timekeeping. Your biological clock is actually running a bit faster now, advancing your entire sleep-wake cycle earlier. Dr. Elizabeth Clareman of Harvard Medical School explains it this way. The circadian rhythm is like a watch that runs slightly fast. Over time, it shifts all of your biological processes earlier, not just sleep, but body temperature, hormone release, and even cognitive performance. But this means practically is that if you're falling asleep at 9 p.m., because that's when your body now naturally feels sleepy, you might have completed your necessary sleep cycles by 3 or 4 a.m. Your body isn't malfunctioning when it wakes you up then. From its perspective, you've had a full night's sleep. Your internal clock is simply saying, we've completed our rest period, time to start the day, even though the actual hour might seem uncomfortably early by social standards. Barbara, a 68-year-old grandmother of 4, experienced this shift dramatically after she retired. I used to be a night owl, she told me. My husband would go to bed around 10 p.m., and I'd stay up until midnight, enjoying my me time. But about a year after retirement, I noticed I was nodding off in my chair around 8:30 p.m. At first, I fought it. I didn't want to become one of those old people who can't stay awake for the evening news. Barbara laughed as she continued. Then I'd wake up at 3:30 a.m., wide awake, frustrated that I'd missed part of my night. I'd lie there feeling annoyed, checking the clock, telling myself to go back to sleep. What changed for Barbara was understanding that her body wasn't malfunctioning. It had simply shifted schedules. Once I realized this was normal, I stopped fighting it. Instead of forcing myself to stay up later, I honored my body's new rhythm. I started going to bed when I felt sleepy, usually around 8:30 p.m., and instead of lying in bed frustrated at 3:30 a.m., I started embracing those early morning hours. Now Barbara uses those quiet dawn hours for meditation and writing. It's the most peaceful time of day, she says. I watch the world wake up. I feel connected to something larger than myself. What I once saw as a sleep problem has become a gift. What makes this circadian shift particularly pronounced for many older adults is the reduction in strong external time cues that once structured their days. When you were working, raising children, or managing a busy household, your days were likely anchored by consistent wake-up times, meal schedules, commutes, meetings, and social obligations. These external markers, what scientists call Zeitgebers or time givers, helped keep your circadian rhythm synchronized with the social world around you. In retirement or semi-retirement, many of these strict time anchors fade away. Without the 7 a.m. alarm for work, the 8:30 IA meeting, or the 3 p.m. school pickup, your body has more freedom to drift toward its natural preferences, which, for many older adults, means shifting earlier. This natural drift can be further reinforced by changes in your evening environment. If your evenings have become quieter, with less social stimulation and more time spent in dimly lit rooms watching television or reading, your body receives stronger signals that it's time to wind down. Without the noise and activity that once kept you alert later into the evening, your system may initiate its sleep sequence hours earlier than it used to. The key insight here is recognizing that this shift isn't a disorder. It's a natural evolution of your circadian biology. Your body isn't broken, it's simply running on a different schedule than it used to, one that might be at odds with social expectations or your own ideas about when you should be sleeping. When you understand this, you open the door to working with your new rhythm rather than constantly fighting against it. You might experiment with gently stretching your evening alertness by introducing more light, more engaging activities, or more social connection in the early evening hours. Or you might choose to embrace your body's new schedule, allowing yourself to sleep when you're tired and wake when you're naturally alert, even if that means being awake before the rest of the world. 3. Physical discomfort and health issues. Now let's turn our attention to something more tangible, the physical sensations and health conditions that often become more noticeable companions as we journey through life. These physical factors can play a significant role in those middle-of-the-night awakenings, especially when the world is quiet and there are fewer distractions from the body's signals. Think about joint discomfort, particularly conditions like arthritis. During your active daytime hours, constant movement helps keep your joints relatively limber. The regular change in position, the natural stretching that comes with everyday activities, and even the distraction of engaging with others can all mask the low-level ache of stiff joints. But after lying still in the same position for several hours at night, that stiffness can intensify. You might not wake up thinking, "My hip is bothering me," but the discomfort itself, even if it's below the threshold of conscious awareness, can be enough to disrupt the delicate architecture of your sleep, particularly during those lighter sleep phases common in the early morning hours. Richard, age 76, describes his experience. "I've had some arthritis in my shoulders for years, but during the day I hardly notice it. But I found myself waking up around 3:30 almost every night, feeling restless. My doctor suggested it might be my shoulders bothering me, even though I wasn't feeling obvious pain. He recommended I try a body pillow to provide better support. It was revelatory. Those middle-of-the-night wake-ups decreased dramatically. My body was trying to tell me something, and I just needed to listen." Beyond joint discomfort, digestive issues often make themselves known in the quiet nighttime hours. Acid reflux or GERD can cause a burning sensation or pressure that wakes you from sleep, especially if you've eaten later in the evening or consumed foods that trigger these conditions. Even subtle issues like mild indigestion or bloating can create enough internal discomfort to disrupt sleep without you immediately connecting the dots between your digestion and your wakefulness. Then there's the matter of your bladder, perhaps one of the most common culprits behind those 3 a.m. awakenings. As we age, several factors converge to make nighttime bathroom trips more frequent. For men, the prostate often enlarges, a condition called benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, placing pressure on the bladder and creating more frequent urges to urinate. For women, the muscles supporting the bladder might weaken over time, particularly after childbirth years earlier, leading to similar increases in nighttime urination. Hormonal changes play a role too. Your body produces a hormone called vasopressin that helps concentrate urine during the night, allowing you to sleep through without needing to use the bathroom. But production of this hormone often decreases with age, leading to more urine production during sleeping hours. Even mild dehydration can paradoxically lead to more bathroom trips. If you're slightly dehydrated, your urine becomes more concentrated, which can irritate the bladder lining, creating the sensation of needing to urinate even when your bladder isn't particularly full. The act of getting up to use the bathroom, walking through the house, turning on lights, moving around, can efficiently end your sleep cycle. Even if you felt drowsy moments before, this activity signals to your body that it's time to be alert. Returning to bed doesn't automatically reset this signal, which is why many people struggle to fall back asleep after a bathroom trip. Consider Elizabeth's experience. "I found myself waking every night around 2:30 a.m. needing to use the bathroom. After reading about how timing fluid intake could help, I made a simple change. I started having my last glass of water around 7 p.m. instead of right before bed at 10 p.m. I was surprised at how much difference those 3 hours made. I still occasionally wake up, but much less frequently." Beyond these common issues, other physical factors can disrupt sleep in those vulnerable morning hours. Changes in temperature regulation can leave you feeling uncomfortably warm or cold. As we age, our bodies may become less efficient at maintaining a consistent core temperature through the night, leading to awakenings when we become too hot or too cold. Respiratory issues like sleep apnea or even mild congestion can cause micro-awakenings that you might not remember but which fragment your sleep enough that you find yourself fully conscious in the early morning hours, unsure why you're awake, but unable to drift back to sleep. And we can't overlook the role of medications. The very treatments helping manage health conditions might be influencing your sleep patterns. Many common medications for heart conditions, blood pressure, asthma, depression, or pain can affect sleep architecture as a side effect. Some may cause more frequent urination, others might influence dream cycles, while still others might affect how deeply you sleep or how easily you transition between sleep stages. Joseph, 79, discovered this connection after months of frustration. I've been taking blood pressure medication for years, but my doctor recently changed the prescription. About 2 weeks later, I started waking up every night around 3 a.m. It took me a while to make the connection, but when I mentioned it to my pharmacist, she explained that my new medication was a diuretic that could cause nighttime urination. My doctor adjusted my dosage schedule, having me take it earlier in the day, and the nighttime awakenings became much less frequent. What's particularly important to recognize about these physical wake-up calls is that they're not signs of failure. They're signs that your body is doing exactly what it should be doing, noticing sensations, responding to needs, alerting you when something requires attention. These signals aren't your enemy. They're information, valuable feedback about what your body might need. Rather than viewing these interruptions purely as annoyances, we might reframe them as opportunities to check in with ourselves. Is there a persistent discomfort that might benefit from closer attention? Could a change in evening routine ease digestive issues? Is it time to review medications and their timing with your healthcare provider? These middle-of-the-night awakenings might be inconvenient, but they can also be invitations to a more attentive, responsive relationship with your physical self, chances to listen more closely to what your body is trying to tell you. 4. Daily routines and lifestyle habits. Let's explore how the rhythms and routines of your daily life, those seemingly small choices that might seem disconnected from your nighttime experience, are actually shaping your sleep in profound ways. The architecture of your day builds the foundation for your night, often in ways we don't fully recognize. Consider how retirement or semi-retirement reshapes the entire structure of your day. The routines that once provided firm anchors, the alarm clock that rang at the same time each morning, the commute that required leaving by a certain hour, the lunch break that came at noon, the evening return home. These fixed points created a predictable rhythm for your body. Now those rigid structures might have softened or disappeared altogether. Your morning might begin when you naturally wake rather than when an alarm demands. Meals might happen when you're hungry rather than when a schedule dictates. Physical activity might be more sporadic rather than built into your daily commute or work activities. This newfound freedom is wonderful in many ways, but it also means your body receives fewer strong, consistent cues about when to be alert and when to rest. Without these external timekeepers, your internal clock may drift, often shifting towards an earlier schedule as we discussed, but sometimes becoming simply less consistent day to day. Martha, 70, noticed this pattern after retiring from her 40-year nursing career. When I was working, everything ran like clockwork, up at 5:30 a.m., breakfast at 6, at the hospital by 7. Lunch at 12:30, home by 4:30, dinner at 6, bed by 10. My body knew exactly what to expect each day. After I retired, I enjoyed the freedom of no schedule, but after a few months, my sleep became erratic. I'd fall asleep on the couch at 7 p.m., then wake up at 2 a.m. and be up for hours. Martha realized her body was missing those consistent daily signals. I decided to create a new routine, not as rigid as my working days, but with enough structure to give my body some predictability. I started taking a morning walk at roughly the same time each day. I joined a lunch group that meets twice weekly. I set an alarm not to wake up, but to remind me not to nap too late in the afternoon. It wasn't about filling every minute. It was about creating a gentle rhythm to my days. Her sleep didn't transform overnight, but within a few weeks, Martha found herself sleeping more consistently. I still sometimes wake up early, but it's not the same middle-of-the-night wide-awake feeling I was struggling with before. Meal timing, in particular, sends powerful signals to your body's internal clock. If you've shifted to eating dinner much earlier than you used to, perhaps at 5 p.m. instead of 7 p.m., your digestive system and metabolism receive the message that the active part of your day is ending sooner. This can trigger an earlier release of melatonin and advance your entire sleep cycle, potentially contributing to those 3 a.m. awakenings. Similarly, the balance and timing of your food intake can influence your blood sugar levels throughout the night. If you eat a very light dinner early in the evening, your blood glucose levels might dip too low in the early morning hours, triggering the release of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to raise blood sugar. These hormones also happen to promote wakefulness, a useful evolutionary adaptation to ensure you could wake up and find food if needed, but not so helpful when you're trying to sleep through the night in your comfortable bedroom. On the flip side, a very heavy meal too close to bedtime can lead to digestive discomfort that disrupts sleep later in the night as your body works to process that food. Thomas, 74, discovered this connection through careful observation. I noticed I was most likely to wake up around 3 a.m. on days when I'd had an early light dinner. My wife suggested I try having a small snack before bed, just a few whole grain crackers with a little peanut butter. Nothing heavy, just something to keep my blood sugar stable through the night. It made a remarkable difference in how often I woke up in those early hours. Physical activity patterns matter tremendously too. Regular movement throughout the day helps build what sleep scientists call sleep pressure, the physiological need for deep rest that accumulates during waking hours. Without sufficient physical activity, you simply might not build up enough of this sleep pressure to maintain deeper sleep through the entire night. But timing matters as well. Vigorous exercise too close to bedtime can leave your nervous system stimulated and your body temperature elevated, making it harder to fall asleep initially. Conversely, gentle movement like evening walks or bedtime stretching can help release tension and prepare your body for rest. Napping habits can significantly impact nighttime sleep as well. While a brief afternoon nap can be restorative, particularly as we age, longer naps, or those taken too late in the day, can decrease sleep pressure, making it harder to stay asleep throughout the night. It's not that naps are problematic, they can be wonderfully refreshing, but their timing and duration matter. And we can't overlook the influence of caffeine and alcohol on sleep architecture. As we age, our metabolism generally slows, meaning substances like caffeine can remain in our system much longer than they used to. That afternoon cup of coffee or tea that never bothered your sleep in your 40s might now be lingering in your system at 3 a.m., making your sleep lighter and more easily disrupted. Similarly, while alcohol might help you fall asleep initially, it significantly disrupts sleep architecture later in the night. As your body metabolizes alcohol, it can cause what sleep specialists call a rebound effect, leading to more fragmented, lighter sleep in the second half of the night, often right around that 3 a.m. time frame. Frank, 77, made this connection after tracking his sleep patterns. I enjoyed having a glass of wine with dinner and sometimes a nightcap before bed. I never thought it affected me. I'd fall asleep easily, but I noticed on nights when I had that second drink, I was almost guaranteed to be wide awake at 3 a.m. When I cut back to just one glass with dinner and earlier in the evening, those middle-of-the-night wake-ups became much less frequent. Light exposure throughout the day also powerfully shapes your sleep-wake cycle. Bright light, particularly morning sunlight, helps set your internal clock and promotes healthy melatonin production later in the evening. Many older adults get less outdoor time and therefore less exposure to the bright, full-spectrum light that most effectively regulates the circadian system. Simultaneously, evening exposure to blue light from screens, televisions, computers, tablets, phones, can suppress melatonin production and delay the natural drowsiness that helps you fall and stay asleep. As we age and natural melatonin production already decreases, this effect can become even more pronounced. What emerges from all these connections is a profound realization: sleep doesn't just happen at night. It's the culmination of how you live your entire day. The small choices, when you eat, how you move, what you drink, how you expose yourself to light, the rhythms and patterns you create, all weave together to shape your night's rest. This interconnectedness is actually empowering. It means you have multiple avenues to influence your sleep, multiple opportunities throughout your day to send helpful signals to your body about when to be alert and when to rest. By becoming more attuned to these connections, you can begin making thoughtful adjustments to gently guide your body back towards a sleep cycle that feels more restorative and less prone to those unwelcome 3 a.m. interruptions. 5. Emotional and mental processing. Now let's venture into territory that's less tangible, but perhaps even more significant. How your emotional and mental life influences those quiet hours when the house is still and dark. There's a special quality to 3 a.m. consciousness, isn't there? A clarity, an openness, sometimes an intensity that feels different from daytime awareness. During your busy daytime hours, your mind is occupied with practical matters, preparing meals, attending appointments, engaging in conversations, watching programs, reading books, managing household tasks. There's a constant stream of external input demanding your attention. But in the profound quiet of the middle night, when external stimulation fades away, your mind has space for a different kind of work. This is when the inner life often steps forward. Thoughts and feelings that were kept at bay by daytime activities can surface. Memories, concerns, reflections that remain in the background during waking hours may emerge with surprising clarity in these quiet hours. Gene 84 describes it beautifully. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and my mind immediately goes to people I haven't thought about in years. My childhood friend Elaine, my first boss, my neighbor from the apartment I lived in as a young mother. It's not unpleasant. It's almost like my mind is sorting through my life, revisiting moments and people that shaped me. During the day, I'm too busy to dwell on these memories, but in those quiet hours, they come to me with such vividness. This kind of reflective wakefulness isn't necessarily the same as anxiety-driven insomnia that younger people might experience. It's often gentler, more contemplative, a natural review process that psychologists suggest might be an important part of making meaning from our life experiences as we age. Erik Erikson, a developmental psychologist who studied the full human lifespan, identified the main psychological task of later adulthood as achieving what he called ego integrity, to essentially coming to terms with your life as it has been lived, integrating both joys and disappointments into a coherent sense of meaning and wholeness. It's possible that those middle-of-the-night periods of wakeful reflection may serve this deeper psychological purpose, giving your mind space for the important work of life review and integration. For some, these nighttime contemplations focus on unresolved matters, relationships that ended abruptly, words left unsaid, paths not taken. Not necessarily with regret, but with a desire to understand and make peace. For others, the focus might be on the future. Concerns about health, finances, or family members that are kept busy during the day but surface in the quiet darkness. Robert, 78, shared his experience. After my wife died, I started waking up around 2:30 or 3 most nights. At first I thought it was just grief disrupting my sleep, but over time I realized these quiet hours had become a kind of communion with her memory. I would lie there and have conversations with her in my mind, tell her about my day, work through decisions I was making. It sounds strange, but these middle-of-the-night conversations helped me adjust to life without her, in a way that the busy daytime hours couldn't accommodate. It's also important to acknowledge the role that loneliness can play in these nighttime awakenings. As life unfolds, social connections naturally shift. Children grow up and create their own families. Friends move away or pass on. Partners may be lost through death or divorce, and retirement can diminish daily interactions with colleagues. Even when daytime hours include social contact, a lunch with friends, calls with family members, interactions at the grocery store or community center, the contrast of a quiet house at night can amplify feelings of solitude. This loneliness doesn't always manifest as acute sadness. Often it's a more subtle awareness of being alone with your thoughts, a quiet ache for connection, or simply the absence of another breathing presence nearby. This awareness can be enough to bring you from lighter sleep into full wakefulness, especially during those vulnerable early morning hours when sleep is naturally lighter. Dorothy, 75, found herself regularly waking between 3 and 4 a.m. after moving to a retirement community following her husband's passing. During the day, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed my new home. I made friends quickly, joined several activity groups, kept myself busy. But night was different. I'd wake up in those early hours with a heaviness I couldn't quite name. It wasn't grief exactly, more a profound awareness of being alone after 52 years of marriage. Dorothy found comfort in an unexpected place. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, a quiet older fellow who needed a home. He started sleeping at the foot of my bed, and somehow his presence, just the sound of his breathing, made those middle-of-the-night awakenings less lonely. Often I would just listen to his soft purring and drift back to sleep without the restless thoughts that used to keep me awake. For others, creative expression becomes a channel for these nighttime awarenesses. Some keep a journal by their bed to capture thoughts or feelings that surface in the darkness. Others find that a brief meditation practice helps them acknowledge these middle-of-the-night visitors without becoming entangled in them. Still others use this time for prayer or spiritual reflection, finding meaning in these quiet hours of heightened awareness. It's worth considering that throughout much of human history, before electric lighting made prolonged evening activities possible, a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night was actually quite normal. Historians and sleep researchers have found evidence that pre-industrial societies often practiced what's called segmented sleep, sleeping for around 4 hours, waking for an hour or two during which people would reflect, pray, chat quietly with bedmates, or even visit neighbors, before returning to sleep until dawn. This historical perspective suggests that perhaps these middle-of-the-night awakenings aren't abnormal at all. They might be a return to a more natural sleep pattern that was common before modern lighting and industrialized schedules changed our relationship with darkness and night. What emerges from all these considerations is the possibility that those 3 a.m. awakenings might not be a sleep disorder at all, but rather a different kind of consciousness, a special window when your mind can wander, reflect, process, and integrate in ways that the busy, structured daytime hours don't easily permit. Rather than immediately seeing these mental or emotional wake-ups as something wrong that needs to be suppressed or fixed, perhaps we can approach them with gentle curiosity and even a measure of respect. What might your mind be trying to process? What feelings are asking for attention? What part of your rich inner life is seeking expression in these quiet hours? Sometimes the most profound rest isn't found in forcing sleep, but in honoring these moments of quiet wakefulness, in listening to the whispers of your own heart and mind with compassion rather than frustration. 6. Environmental sensitivities and sleep light. As we journey into the later chapters of life, something remarkable happens to our senses. They don't simply diminish, as conventional wisdom might suggest. Instead, they often become more finely tuned in subtle but significant ways, particularly during the vulnerable state of sleep. This increased sensitivity, especially to environmental stimuli, can play a surprising role in those 3 a.m. awakenings. Let's first consider your sensitivity to sound. While you might find it harder to hear conversation in a noisy restaurant or to catch all the dialogue in a movie, your sleeping brain might paradoxically become more attuned to certain types of sounds, particularly those that indicate potential concerns. The distant sound of a cough from your spouse sleeping beside you, the settle of the house as temperatures cool in the night, a car door closing on the street, the click of your heating system turning on. These subtle sounds that you might have slept through in your younger years can now be enough to bring you from deeper sleep into wakefulness, particularly during those lighter sleep stages common in the early morning hours. Harriet, 81, noticed this change after moving from her suburban home to an apartment in the city to be closer to her daughter. "I never considered myself a light sleeper before," she told me, "but suddenly I was waking up several times a night, when neighbors came home late, when the elevator ran, even when the refrigerator cycled on. My daughter suggested foam earplugs, and I was surprised at what a difference such a simple solution made. Now those little noises don't pull me out of sleep the way they used to." Similarly, your sensitivity to light may increase with age. The ability of your pupils to constrict decreases over time, meaning more light enters your eyes even when it's dim. Your lens yellows slightly, changing how you perceive certain light wavelengths. These changes can make even small amounts of light, the glow from a digital clock, light filtering under a door, the distant illumination from street lamps through curtains, more disruptive to your sleep. This increased light sensitivity is particularly significant because light is the most powerful signal to your circadian system. Even brief exposure to light during the night can suppress melatonin production and signal your brain that it's time to be awake, making it difficult to return to sleep after even a momentary awakening. Temperature sensitivity often increases with age as well. Your body's ability to regulate its internal temperature becomes less efficient, making you more vulnerable to being awakened by a room that's too warm or too cold. The comfortable temperature range for sleep tends to narrow, meaning smaller variations in bedroom temperature that you might have slept through when younger can now disturb your rest. Thomas, 77, discovered this connection after tracking his sleep for several weeks. I noticed I was most likely to wake up around 3 a.m. on nights when the temperature dropped significantly overnight. Our programmable thermostat was set to lower the heat at 11 p.m. to save energy. When I adjusted it to maintain a more consistent temperature through the night, my sleep improved noticeably. Even your sense of touch can become more acute during sleep. Pressure points from your mattress, slight restrictions from bedding, or the texture of nightclothes may become more noticeable as you age, particularly if you're spending more time in lighter stages of sleep where sensory awareness is heightened. Margaret, 73, made a simple change that had profound effects. I'd been waking up with discomfort in my shoulders and hips. My daughter suggested I try a different mattress topper, something with memory foam to relieve pressure points. I was skeptical that something so simple could make a difference, but it transformed my sleep. Those pressure points that were waking me up at 3 a.m. weren't bothering me anymore. Beyond these individual sensory changes, there's another environmental factor worth considering, what sleep scientists call sleep inertia. This is the period of transitional grogginess and reduced cognitive performance that follows awakening. While everyone experiences some degree of sleep inertia, that's why we don't make our best decisions immediately after waking up, this transition state tends to lengthen with age. What this means practically is that if something wakes you, a need to use the bathroom, a subtle noise, a change in temperature, it may take your brain longer to return to sleep than it would have when you were younger. That window of wakefulness extends, giving your mind more time to become fully alert and engaged, making it harder to drift back to sleep. James, 79, found a simple routine helped with this challenge. I used to get up to use the bathroom and then lie awake for hours afterward. My sleep specialist suggested that when I returned to bed, I should do a simple breathing exercise, just counting my breaths from 1 to 10 over and over. It gives my brain something simple to focus on while sleep inertia resolves, rather than getting caught up in thoughts that keep me awake. Most nights now, I don't even make it to 10 before I'm drifting off again. What's particularly interesting about these environmental sensitivities is that they often interact with the other factors we've discussed. That increased sensitivity to sound might wake you during a period when your melatonin levels are already lower. The brief light exposure from checking the clock might further suppress your already diminished melatonin production. A slight chill from lower night temperatures might coincide with a natural rise in body temperature that occurs in early morning as part of your circadian rhythm. These overlapping factors create what scientists call a perfect storm for wakefulness. Multiple, subtle influences converging at once to bring you from sleep to alertness. It's not any single factor, but their combination that often leads to those persistent 3 a.m. wake-ups. The good news in all this is that environmental factors are often the most readily modified aspects of your sleep experience. Blackout curtains, white noise machines, temperature-regulating bedding, supportive pillows, and mindful management of bedroom lighting are all relatively simple interventions that can have surprisingly powerful effects on sleep quality. Eleanor, 83, summed it up perfectly. Once I understood how much more sensitive I'd become to my sleep environment, I stopped blaming myself for being a bad sleeper. Instead, I started creating a sleep sanctuary that worked with my more sensitive system rather than against it. I got room darkening shades, a sound machine that masks the street noise, and a weighted blanket that helps me feel secure. I still sometimes wake up early, but much less often. And when I do, I'm able to get back to sleep more easily. This perspective shift, from viewing increased sensitivity as a flaw to recognizing it as simply a change that requires adaptation, can transform how you approach those middle-of-the-night awakenings. Instead of fighting against your more finely tuned senses, you can create an environment that supports and accommodates them, working with your changing body rather than against it. 7. Medication effects and chronopharmacology. Let's explore a critical but often overlooked factor that can significantly impact your sleep patterns, particularly those 3 a.m. awakenings. The medications that support your health in so many ways, but might also be subtly influencing when and how you sleep. As we journey through life, particularly into our 60s, 70s, and beyond, many of us come to rely on various medications to manage health conditions. Medications for blood pressure, heart health, diabetes, arthritis, mood disorders, thyroid function, and many other aspects of well-being. While these medications are essential for maintaining health, they can interact with sleep in ways that aren't immediately obvious. What makes this particularly complex is that the effects aren't always direct or immediate. A medication you've been taking successfully for years might gradually begin affecting your sleep as your body changes with age. Your metabolism slows, your body composition shifts, and the way you process medications evolves too. Dr. Raymond Miller, a geriatric pharmacist I consulted, explains it this way. The same dose of the same medication can have different effects as we age. Our liver and kidneys process drugs more slowly, meaning medications stay in our system longer. Our bodies have less water and more fat, which changes how drugs are distributed and stored in tissues. And most importantly, drugs can interact with each other in ways that become more significant as we add more medications over time. Consider common medications for high blood pressure, particularly diuretics or water pills. These important medications help lower blood pressure by helping your body eliminate excess sodium and water. But this increased elimination often means more frequent urination, including during the night. If you take your diuretic in the evening or late afternoon, its peak effect might occur right around those early morning hours, increasing the likelihood of needing to use the bathroom at 3 a.m. Catherine, 76, experienced this directly. I was taking my blood pressure medication right before bed because I thought it would help me sleep better. But my pharmacist explained that one of my medications was actually a diuretic, and taking it at night was practically guaranteeing I'd need to get up to use the bathroom. When I switched to taking it in the morning, those middle-of-the-night bathroom trips became much less frequent. Beta blockers, another class of heart and blood pressure medications, can affect sleep in a different way. These medications block certain receptors for adrenaline and similar hormones. While this is beneficial for heart health, these same receptors are involved in the production and regulation of melatonin. Some beta blockers can suppress melatonin production, potentially contributing to those early morning awakenings when melatonin levels are already naturally lower. Medications for depression and anxiety can influence sleep architecture too. Some antidepressants have activating effects that can make sleep lighter or cause early morning awakening if taken later in the day. Others might have sedating properties initially but can disrupt the normal progression through sleep stages, leading to less restorative sleep overall. Even common over-the-counter medications can play a role. Many pain relievers contain caffeine to enhance their effectiveness. Decongestants often have stimulating properties. Antihistamines might help you fall asleep initially due to their sedating effects, but they can disrupt REM sleep and lead to grogginess the next day. Furthermore, if you use these medications regularly, your body may develop tolerance to the sedating effects while still experiencing the disruption to normal sleep architecture. What's particularly fascinating is an emerging field called chronopharmacology, the study of how the timing of medication administration interacts with your body's natural rhythms. Research is showing that when you take a medication can be almost as important as what medication you take. Dr. Michael Smolensky, a leader in this field, explains, our bodies aren't the same all day and night. Enzyme levels fluctuate, blood flow to different organs changes, cell receptors become more or less sensitive. This means a medication taken at 9 a.m. might have a different effect or potency than the same medication taken at 9 p.m. This time-dependent response to medications is why some blood pressure medications work best when taken at bedtime, while others are more effective in the morning. It's why certain pain medications might provide better relief when timed to align with your body's natural cortisol fluctuations. And it may explain why a medication regimen that worked perfectly for years might suddenly seem to be affecting your sleep. George, 82, experienced this shift after years on the same medications. I'd been taking the same thyroid medication for over a decade without any issues, but gradually I started noticing I was waking up around 3:30, i.e. feeling jittery, almost wired. My doctor suggested we check my thyroid levels, and sure enough, they were too high. As we age, we sometimes need less medication to achieve the same effect. Once we adjusted the dosage, those middle-of-the-night wake-ups with that wired feeling stopped. This example highlights another important consideration: the need for regular review of all medications as you age. A dosage that was perfect at 65 might be too high at 75 or 80. Your body is continuously changing, and your medication needs may change along with it. What's particularly challenging about connecting medications to sleep disruption is that the relationship isn't always obvious or immediate. You might not take a pill and immediately experience sleep problems. Instead, the effects might be subtle, cumulative, or only apparent in certain circumstances or combinations. Additionally, many of us see different specialists for different conditions: a cardiologist for heart health, an endocrinologist for diabetes or thyroid issues, a rheumatologist for arthritis. Each specialist prescribes medications within their area of expertise, but they might not be aware of all the medications you're taking or how they might collectively impact your sleep. This is where a comprehensive medication review can be incredibly valuable. Bringing a complete list of all medications, prescription, over-the-counter, and supplements to your primary care provider or a pharmacist specializing in geriatric care can help identify potential interactions or timing issues that might be contributing to those 3 a.m. awakenings. Kenneth, 78, discovered this after months of sleep disruption. I was seeing 3 different specialists, each of whom had prescribed medications. I was also taking several over-the-counter supplements recommended by friends. When my pharmacist reviewed everything together, she identified 2 medications that were essentially working against each other, and another that was best taken in the morning, but I'd been taking at night. Making those adjustments significantly improved my sleep. It's important to emphasize that you should never adjust or stop prescribed medications without consulting your healthcare provider. The conditions these medications treat are generally more serious than sleep disruption. However, having an informed conversation about medication timing, potential alternatives, or dosage adjustments might reveal options that support both your overall health and your sleep quality. This intersection of medications, aging, and sleep represents a perfect example of how personalized healthcare becomes as we age. The same medication can affect different people differently, and even affect the same person differently at different stages of life. Understanding these nuanced relationships empowers you to be a more informed advocate for your own health, working in partnership with your healthcare providers to find solutions that support both your medical needs and your quality of life, including the blessing of more restful sleep. As we draw our exploration to a close, I hope you're feeling something that might not have been present when we began: a sense of deeper understanding about those 3 a.m. awakenings that have perhaps been concerning you. We've traveled together through the complex landscape of your body's changing chemistry, the natural shift in your internal clock, the physical signals that might be asking for attention, the daily habits that shape your sleep architecture, the emotional and mental processing that emerges in the quiet hours, the increased environmental sensitivities that come with age, and the medications that support your health while potentially influencing your sleep. What emerges from this journey isn't a simple fix or a one-size-fits-all solution, but something perhaps more valuable: a framework for understanding your unique sleep experience with compassion rather than frustration, with curiosity rather than judgment. Those middle-of-the-night awakenings aren't random glitches or signs that your body is failing you. They're often the natural expression of the remarkable, complex, evolving body that's carried you through decades of life. They're reflections of the genuine biological changes that accompany the accumulation of years and experiences. They're sometimes even opportunities, quiet spaces for reflection, for listening to your body's needs, for honoring the fullness of your inner life in ways the busy daylight hours may not permit. This shift in perspective, from viewing 3 a.m. awakenings as a problem to be eliminated to seeing them as a natural transition to be understood, can transform how you experience these moments. The frustration of lying awake, calculating how little sleep you'll get if you don't fall back asleep right now, can give way to a gentler acceptance. Ah, here I am, awake again. What might my body or mind be telling me? How can I work with this experience rather than fight against it? Remember Margaret, who created a truly dark sleeping environment to support her changing melatonin production? Barbara, who embraced her shifted schedule and found beauty in the early morning hours? Richard, who discovered his arthritic shoulders needed better support? Thomas, who stabilized his nighttime blood sugar with a simple bedtime snack? Jean, who recognized her middle-of-the-nighttime reflections as part of making meaning from a lifetime of experiences? Eleanor, who created a sleep sanctuary attuned to her more sensitive senses? Kenneth, who worked with his healthcare providers to optimize his medication timing? Each found their own path toward more peaceful nights, not by fighting against their changing bodies, but by listening, understanding, and making thoughtful adjustments that honored who they are now in this chapter of life. Your path will be uniquely yours, reflecting your particular biology, lifestyle, health considerations, and personal preferences. But it begins with this fundamental shift from frustration to understanding, from resistance to accommodation, from seeing these awakenings as evidence of something wrong to recognizing them as part of your body's continuing adaptation to life's journey. In embracing this perspective, you may discover not only more restful nights, but also a deeper appreciation for the incredible resilience of your body. This remarkable vessel that has carried you through decades of experiences, that continues to adapt and adjust, that still, after all these years, works tirelessly to maintain your well-being, even if it operates a bit differently than it once did. So tonight, if you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., perhaps you can greet that moment, not with dread, but with gentle curiosity. What is your body telling you? What does it need? How might you work with this awakening rather than against it? In that simple shift of perspective lies the possibility of not only better sleep, but a more compassionate relationship with yourself and the natural transitions that accompany this rich, complex journey of aging. Sleep well, wake well, and remember, both are natural expressions of your remarkable, evolving self.